Hey there, welcome Earth Angels to my first full-length video. This is on My Little Pony Equestria Girls from 2013, and it will be part one of a two-part series. So welcome, and I hope we have a good discussion about all this symbolism showing up in this wonderful children's film. Let's just have a look. My Little Pony Equestria Girls, and I hope that y'all have had a chance to see the film. It's been about 5 days since I put up the intro video letting people know this is the one we'll start with. So I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it yet, stop now, go back, see it. It's on Netflix, or you might even have a friend that has it, on DVD. Okay, so, but I really think it's important that you have a look at it first before hearing all the things that I'm going to be pointing out. So, just as a welcome to Amateur Hour, few disclaimers off the start here. First of all, I do not claim to be an authority on any of the symbolism I'm presenting here for discussion. I have researched some of it in depth, but certainly not in its entirety. There's a lot of rabbit holes and they go deep. And I'm open to hear how others are interpreting these symbols, or if they even see them as symbols. I do caution, though, that there is a lot of propaganda out there which has the goal of making once sacred symbols of enlightenment out to be satanic or evil in some way. So in the comments to this video, I only ask that those who choose to comment here keep it civil and try to avoid being judgmental. Let's have an open discussion about things. Okay, so I just want to also say that many of the pictures in this first presentation are not of great quality. They're quite bad because I started out doing this with my cell phone while watching the movie on our big screen TV. And instead of going back and retaking all these snapshots, I used them and then have done what I can to adjust them so they're viewable. I had let's see. I later discovered that I had an old laptop which has home theater on it and could install Netflix, and so a good deal of the photos about midway through are done that way with the clip tool on my laptop. And that's why when you start seeing the red line more and more prominent in the pictures, because I cannot, when taking clips of Netflix, I can't get rid of the timeline. I'm sure there are better ways of doing this, and I'm open to suggestions, but this was the easiest way for me to get started with this, so hopefully things will get more professional over time. Something to look forward to, anyway. After a couple of false starts trying to view things, I tried first, and I ended up going back to the way I'm going to show it to you now, through the the file view mode. I tried to do a slideshow, and I even recorded a slideshow, and it simply won't let me move through it at my own pace the way I want to. So it's going to look kind of not that great, but we're going to look at it like this. So there's our first little pic. Yeah, I would prefer it on a black background, and maybe some of you can chime in the comments or message me personally on how you get those things to work, because it's, yeah, I've tried a couple of different things. So anyway, some of you more experienced YouTubers may laugh at this, but I included here to share with the Earth Angels because Sam has made it clear to me that this is my rehab. This is definitely part of my rehab. Every time I've been trying to work on this, I get Amy Winehouse's Rehab and others, similar songs playing multiple times, even when I'm on shuffle autoplay while preparing this. So it's a growth process. So let's grow together. Okay, so let's see why My Little Pony Equestria Girls. How did this animated feature film come into my awareness? I have a single son who is now 20 years old, and so I was not into My Little Pony. I don't have a little girl that we popped in the DVDs. I'm sure there's many of you that have seen this these and they're very popular since 2010. But this came into my awareness back approximately 2 months ago while I was searching Netflix for the new Danish post-apocalyptic series The Rain, and on the suggested related titles list, My Little Pony Equestrian Girls popped up. This is a children's animated feature showing up in the suggested related to an apocalyptic film. So I thought, that's odd. And I had one of those Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the others moments. And growing up in the 70s, I think we were conditioned or programmed to start looking for odd things. One of these things is not like the others. I don't have a singing voice, but many of you can relate to that little ditty from Sesame Street. So, being an avid consumer of Netflix, I have experienced this multiple times when searching for something on Netflix. Their algorithm has a way of connecting the messages behind the films. The things pop up that are way outside of the specific genre or intended audience of the film you're searching for and seem totally unrelated, but when you start looking deeper, they is very interesting. Anyway, okay. And yes, I know there's some noise on my headset. I'm trying my headset. The first video I did with my regular earbuds, but I'm trying the headset now. And yes, I did turn off the booster, which was boosting the fan of my computer and making noise as soon as I was quiet. It was buzzing terribly. So hopefully the sound is working out now. So as a sidebar to this, finding this one in the suggested or related titles list, there was another related title that was kind of one of these things is not like the others. There were actually two of these things or three of these things, and it was Disney's Atlantis: The Lost Empire. So that also came up in the related films with The Rain, and we'll definitely be looking at Atlantis film because that's also full of ascension related symbolism. Now I've had I mentioned that my son wasn't into My Little Pony. Surprise, surprise. But he did have a brief interest in the toys that went with a different series from the same company, Hasbro, the Transformers. And that's why you see a lot of the Transformers films in the intro background video that I did, because it too, I'm finding out, is rife with ascension stories. So we have My Little Pony for girls and Transformers for boys. And Transformers, there are 5 films in the Transformers series, and the 6th one's coming out. And let's see, I have that. Just want to show you. Right here, Bumblebee, coming out Christmas. So hopefully I'll be able to do at least some overview of the other Transformers films to prepare us for Bumblebee. It's going to be, yeah, that's going to be amazing because Bumblebee communicates through sound clips. And any of you in the SAM community know what I'm referring to there. So that will be amazing. So let's look a little bit more at what is Equestria Girls. Equestria Girls was the first feature-length film done in the My Little Pony series after they'd already been, since 2010, doing animated, weekly series episodes. And the gal who started My Little Pony is Laurel Faust, the woman. Yeah. And she's also known for Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Fantasy Friends. Both Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Fantasy Friends I highly recommend looking at with our new eyes. Unfortunately, Laurel Faust split off from the production company. I don't know if they had a falling out. I'm sure there's those of you that are into My Little Pony and follow the community may know more what happened there, but she only wrote for the first 3 episodes of the first season, back in 2010, and then went from executive producer to consulting producer to not involved and don't even call me. So, and there was something on a chat. I didn't quite understand what was going on, but she was mentioned in the chat as to whether or not she was involved in the new series that came out last fall called, and here it is over to Better Together. It started, so they have new episodes out there with Better Together. Very togetherness oriented. So maybe we are already moved on. Okay. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do further videos on these other ones. That kind of depends on your reaction, y'all's reaction to this one. I will say this is intense. So if you're expecting a brief, okay, this was a little fluff picture, I'm sorry. I mean, it's stop action. It's almost frame for frame in this thing. So that's why we're doing it in 2 parts. So let's go back and look at the cover art. Because a mirror figures prominently in this, and we know about mirrors in terms that we've seen in the Matrix, for example, as a portal. Stargate series, SG-1 as a portal. All the Stargate Atlantis also. And we have the Mandela effect of the mirror, magic mirror versus mirror, and pointing us to that mirrors figure prominently. And when we get further on into this, I have a spiritual interpretation of what the mirror symbolizes. A lot of people are looking for physical portals or magical spells in order to open portals. And that could be something that happens, but I'm just pointing out that I think there's something more concrete in looking in the mirror. So we'll get back to that. Another thing I'd like to point out with this cover art is that you see our main character here, Twilight Sparkle, in her primary form, which is a unicorn with a horn and wings. Now, she evolved into this. She started out a plain little pony and later got both the wings and the unicorn horn. And the wings are relatively new, so for her, she's adjusting to them in this episode. So here, when she goes through the mirror, we'll see later that she becomes a human girl and then starts to revert back to her unicorn form with first ears and wings and then, yeah, and tail and all kinds of. So, but it's a transition or transformation of a creature from a winged status to first a non-winged status when she gets to the other side of this mirror. I'll also point out the horseshoes. Horseshoe. Turn that upside down. What do you got? Looks like an omega sign to me, folks. But anyway, so here we also have spirals we'll talk about. Lots of spirally things. So there's lots of stuff going on just in that one little photo. Okay, another thing that is huge in this whole series is the importance of colors. So I don't know how many of you have seen the Primal Minds. No, what was it? Divine Mind, Primal Mind video that Paul LeMay did with Nathan recently. And Paul did an incredible job of discussing the chakras, and I wish I could say it the way he does. I just say chakras in terms of what the colors are and how it is a representation of consciousness ascending from a lower consciousness of fear and survival mode in the first chakra, and pleasure versus guilt. This is all the duality here that Paul LeMay was talking about, and willpower versus shame in the solar plexus here. And then we have the heart chakra with love and grief, and the throat chakra with truth and lies, and the third eye chakra with insight or intuition versus illusion, and the crown chakra of cosmic energy and ego attachment. So um, there's several reasons why I'm bringing this up. We'll see colors play a role in this to suggest the nature of the different characters and where they are in their consciousness. And I think I'll put a link to this also. There's a great little animated short on how to raise your consciousness and open up your chakras in the little airbender, the last airbender. You can actually just Google it, but I will put the link in the description of this video on how um, he is being shown how to, the little boy is being shown how to open up his chakras and what each chakra stands for and how to release the attachments to the lower levels and move on up. And the final level there is ego attachment. And but I think the thing where we're functioning right now in the group is the insight versus illusion. We're starting to see things. The illusion is falling away. The veil is being lifted. We're seeing things. And like I described in my intro video, I started seeing things that I had never really cared about before, and now seem to fill my days in a very interesting way. Okay, so the 7 chakras there, and notice that they ascend from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And many of you will recognize that sounds like the Roy G. Biv of the rainbow. And so moving along, we can also see it here in, this is from Marlowe's hierarchy of needs, which is another way of looking at, let me just go back a second. So here down in the fear and survival, our needs are, for example, for food and shelter and subsistence and a means of sustenance, for example, work. So if any of the things that make our day even possible, like our health, is in the way of getting a job, is in the way of paying for food or shelter, these are things that keep us down in here. Another thing is war, being afraid of losing our family or homes because of war keeps us also down in the fear level. And then we have the pleasure, yeah. So as we move up, have a look over here. So physiological needs, breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing. Sorry about the watermarks there. Safety and security is moving up into, that will be the sacral chakra. So, and then you get love and belonging, friendship, family, intimacy, connection. We're into solar plexus chakra, feeling a sense of self-worth, self-confidence, and moving into relationships with others. Heart chakra, green. Isn't this interesting? It goes right up through the chakra colors. This is Marlowe's hierarchy of needs. And again, I can put a link or at least a description of it so you can Google it. So self-esteem is in the heart, colored green area here. Confidence, achievement, respect of others, and the need to be unique individual. So this is when we're feeling self-confident and we're able to fulfill our lives and be something for others. And then you move into the indigo, violet, lavender color at the top, where self-actualization, morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, experience, purpose, meaning, and inner potential. And I think that there's missing a top level, which is moving beyond this, because once you've achieved these areas, you're still attached to ego, a sense of identity, of an importantness of being who you are. And there is a level above that, which is to say being part of the all. But I just thought it was interesting when I looked at these 2 diagrams of the 7 chakras and the 7, do we have 7 here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels of Marlowe's hierarchy. Here's another representation of moving from alpha point to the omega point. And this is in terms of raising one's consciousness. So it talks about frequencies over here. That's what these numbers represent. So it starts out with shame and guilt and apathy and grief and fear. Puts fear at 100. I would have thought fear was down here, but that's just how this one represents it. But again, the color scheme is from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And it's going from a contracted to an expanded. So you're contracted, meaning that narrow-mindedness, a narrow view of how things are because the basic things are not secure. As the basic things are secured and one's self-esteem raises and one's awareness raises, then the consciousness expands. We begin to see the world as a whole, people around you as a whole, and even the universe. Okay, so from contraction to expansion and from red to violet. So, yay! Look at this. Look at this rainbow. This was in the very beginning of My Little Pony Equestria Girls. My rainbow! Some of you know this very well. I have a very personal Mandela with the fact that the rainbow doesn't look like this. When you go out in nature and observe a rainbow, you will see red on top, which for me symbolizes the world is ruled by the lower three chakras. And I want to see rainbows with lavender on top again. So, moving on. Okay, so the beginning here, let's scroll along in my notes. We see the moon arranged with 3 stars or planets. Oops, let me just take one step back a second to these levels, because why I bring all this up about the rainbow isn't just because of that one little rainbow. It's also how they colorize the different characters. As I mentioned, it tells us something about the personalities of these characters. So watch out for who shows up with these colors at the top and who shows up with the bottom 3 colors. And I really liked how Paul did the 2 triangles where there were 3 levels in the top triangle inverted over the bottom triangle of the lower 3, where the heart was actually the joining of the 2 triangles. Because green is interestingly missing from both of the 2 main characters of this story. The heroine of the story, Twilight Sparkle, is having the top 3 colors, and the villain of the story, Sunset Shimmer, is having the bottom 3 colors. So the moon and the stars, and I can't see anything anymore without thinking deeper. Is there some meaning there? Yeah, they start out, and we start out looking at the moon and these 3 stars, and then it pans down into the crystal kingdom. And I thought, okay, there might be something there. There might be, I mean, this is where I get into divine inspiration. Sure, it could be happenstance that they arranged these 3 stars and the moon that way. But it could also be a date marker, astrologically or astronomically. So I consulted Lori Lothian, who's in our group, wonderful earth angel who's also an astrologer. And she pointed out, and we had this conversation via chat or messenger on the 25th of July, and coincidentally, this is just was approaching the lunar eclipse on the 27th. And so at first she thought, okay, it's hard to tell from this picture, and what can we say about this? And then she looked into it a little more and came back and said, wow, wait a minute. If you look at this as being a representation, not as the visible, not that if you looked at the moon, but what was happening astronomically. From a non-visible standpoint, this would jive with what's known in astrology circles as a T-square, something which happened to occur with the recent full moon lunar eclipse of the 27th of July 2018, with the moon at 4 degrees Aquarius making a striking T-square with Mars and square Uranus. And Lori, please, if you're listening, correct me in the comments if I misstated that. I'm taking it as best I can from what you wrote to me. So the lunar eclipse on July 2018, while I'm working on this, so sync, is also conjunct with the fixed star Dahib in the head of the goat, and Gedi, which are the two stars in the goat's horns. So these two flanking would be the two horn stars, and this one would be in the head of the goat. And we'll see at the end, not in this video, but in the part 2, that when something happens here with the moon that moves up to block this one. But let's look at the moon right here. It's in its first quarter. You can barely see it. I tried to turn up the contrast on this as best you can, but it's not a full moon. It's actually representing moon in the very first crescent. And when we reach the end of the film, you will see the crescent flipping over to the other side here. So it's in its last quarter before it goes to full moon. So, but I just want to mention that about Dahib and Gedi is another possible interpretation. So the first thing was the Mars and Uranus T-square, and the second thing was that it could be Dahib and the two stars of the Giedi, spelled Giedi. The lunar eclipse speaks. Oh, this is Lori mentioning what is this lunar eclipse that went by us that we experienced the 27th of July. This lunar eclipse speaks of the youthful tendency to live in the moment and become a slave to Venus and her tempting baubles. When we are young, we want to gorge all the sweets in the shop without thinking of the consequences, and when we are older, we learn to value the value of deferred gratification. So that's sort of the meaning of a little bit on the meaning of solar eclipse. So now that's where it starts in the very beginning. See, I'm already how many minutes in here? Yeah, here we go. Descending down from violet to green. And I'm going to pause here a second. Okay, so we're looking at the crystal kingdom, and we descended from violet down to green, and it starts getting even more into a yellowish orange as we move further down. So again, the chakra colors come into play here. But the crystal kingdom, where does it sit? It sits in the heart color green. Also, when looking at the crystal kingdom, the city, it looks very similar to, I mean, as soon as I saw it, I thought of, let's see if we can, why am I not? There we go. What's called the Venus Project. And I have a link that will be, no, that's not it. So we have the Venus Project here. Whoops, sorry. That was on, that's a link I'll put in that Lori shared on the full moon of the 27th and its meanings. So, but this is the Venus Project. Have a look at this. Very interesting. And it also has this stellar circular with a tower or a dome in the center. And it also has these pillars around. So, interesting symbolism. And I'll put a link to the project here of what is the Venus Project. It's kind of a utopian society way of arranging society, and it's actually takes some inspiration from The Island by Aldous Huxley, interestingly enough. Okay, so let's go back in this. So what else do we see in the crystal symbolism here? It has 6 points. We see the star with the 6 points, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. And I believe it was Ptolemy that mentioned that the 6-pointed star is also a 2-dimensional representation of the tetrahedron, which when you look at it, the tetrahedron, it had 12 spokes. You can see radiating out here. This has 12 spokes coming out from the center. And again, if we go back to here, that has the, yeah. Okay, so there's some interesting stuff. Utopian society. Yeah, any relation here? Okay, so moving on from the Venus Project, we descend down the path leading away from the city, and we come to these crystal towers with 3 tetrahedron-shaped crystals, which I'll talk about in a moment, but I just want to show you the color scheme of descending down into an orangish, yellow and orange area. So while we're here, I just also want to point out there are spirals all over the place. They are, yeah, okay, fine, just artistic. Somebody just wanted to put some filler there. But spirals also have a spiritual connotation. As seen throughout this episode, they're going in both directions. So you'll see both counterclockwise, like this one's going counterclockwise, this is going counterclockwise, and then others are going clockwise. Let's see. This one's going clockwise. Anyway, you'll see spirals going both directions. And when you start looking into spirals, that was a bit of a rabbit hole. I spent a whole day reading about all the different cultural meanings of spirals. But just briefly, spirals are found in many ancient cultures. Some use the counterclockwise direction spiral to depict rebirth or reincarnation, where clockwise then symbolizes the decline or decay of the material world. In other words, our linear time, as time moves forward, we get older, we decay, but counterclockwise, rejuvenation, reincarnation. So that's one way of looking at it. Another theosophical meaning, the essence of cosmic electricity, the ever-present electrical energy and ceaseless formative and destructive power in the universe, both formative and destructive, depending on which way. So the vital force is also known in the Native American glyph, was taken the swastika, the original glyph, which rotated counterclockwise. I don't have a picture of it here. I don't want to get tagged for having the swastika involved in this. I will only discuss it as being a representation originally in the Native American as the arms going counterclockwise, and then of course when it became a Nazi symbol, the arms rotate in a clockwise or towards decline. Just want to point that out. So flipping of one's sacred symbols to be the opposite of what they mean originally. Another suggested meaning to the counterclockwise, and I know you can't really see them well here. I don't know if we can we zoom in a bit? Not. Whoa, that was too much. Yeah, it's not very clear. But you'll see them in the background. I have some other shots of them. So another meaning of the counterclockwise is related to the feminine side of duality, and in Masonic traditions it signifies the returning to one's source. For instance, when achieving the 2nd degree, the fellowcraft places his right foot on the first step, but the staircase that he's putting his foot on the first step of the staircase itself winds to the left, or the counterclockwise. So the fellow would be climbing the stairs in a counterclockwise or left-hand turning, approaching the Boaz or strength side of the Freemason symbolism. This may symbolize the material or earthly man rising to divine consciousness and unifying with it. So counterclockwise, positive; clockwise, not so much. Clockwise moves towards decline. And here we have it again in the rebirth and ascension, clockwise versus counterclockwise, denoting rebirth and ascension in the Buddhistic traditions, whereas the clockwise direction signifies the downfall and decay, and equivalent to enduring the trials and tribulations of life. So I just want to point out, I will put a link in on the dukkha. Did I put a, let's see here. Oh, I have the right, didn't I put the dukkha? Yes, what is dukkha? So I'll put that link in. Dukkha is referring to, in the Buddhistic tradition, suffering, and that we move through life in a clockwise fashion and have to go through trials and tribulations and our suffering in order to improve ourselves and raise our consciousness. And once we reach a certain point, we then emerge again. So we go first through contraction, compression, and then we emerge again and expanded consciousness in a counterclockwise fashion. So that goes back to that contracted versus expanded from the alpha to the omega. So you'll get this link on dukkha, which is also connected to. So that was expansion. Then that which is called the Noble Eightfold Path. Why am I not getting the title? There you go, the Noble Eightfold Path. And on the Noble Eightfold Path, it is, again, in the Buddhistic tradition, tells us about the proper way of living. And it tells the Eightfold Path talks about that these are the things that will bring you to higher consciousness when you start behaving in these ways. Right understanding, right thought. I'm not going to try and pronounce the Sanskrit or Pali. Right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And these are the things that bring us, as we achieve them step for step, to a higher consciousness. So where does that come into play here? Let me just skip a little bit ahead. Oh, yeah, we need to stay with the spirals. Maybe you can see the spirals a little better there. But that's why they're relevant. They're not just there because someone thought they looked nice. Yes, someone thought they looked nice. Why did they think they looked nice? It gets us thinking about the counter versus clockwise. Another take on the significance of counter versus clockwise in astrology and astronomy. The planets orbit the sun in a counterclockwise direction, despite the sun of our solar system orbiting the galactic center in a clockwise direction. I find that interesting. How can all the planets are going counterclockwise around the sun? All right. Progression in the orbit, we go counterclockwise around the sun, relevant to the north-south orientation of what we consider the north of this planet and the south of this planet, North Pole, South Pole. But maybe we got it backwards. If we look at it the other way around, if we consider the south of the planet as the north and center, do we then get clockwise? I'm not quite sure. I haven't thought about that. That just occurred to me. So maybe we're looking at this whole planet upside down. Finally, just a note on tornadoes or cyclones in this clockwise, counterclockwise discussion, because cyclones, as they become relevant later, even in this little feature film, In the northern hemisphere, almost all tornadoes rotate in a counterclockwise direction. From an esoteric standpoint, cyclones are a natural phenomenon which can have the incredible strength to pick up material objects and lift them up into the sky. So what that means, lift things up into the sky, approaching heaven. This could be seen as an equivalent of spirit lifting mankind, or the cyclones being a force of nature which raises the consciousness of mankind. So that's what cyclones can symbolize when thinking about this. And we'll talk a lot more about cyclones when we discuss The Wizard of Oz, which is definitely on the top 5 list. Okay. This is already getting to be 40 minutes. Wow. Okay. Moving on to, this might be a 3-part or a 4-part series at this rate. Crystal Towers. Let's look at the Crystal Towers. There we go. Paula May, you're probably going, huh? What? Look at those tetrahedron. Can we make it bigger? Can we just make it a little bigger? Yeah, aren't they beautiful? When I saw them, I'm like, oh, I have to get a shot of that for Paul. Okay. So, did I have anything more about the arches? No, but I did have something more about the train station, because we do see trains and train stations as a symbolic of a way station or a halfway point. For example, in the films such as The Matrix, where the metro station is sort of a halfway point. It's neither in the world or in the afterlife. It's somewhere in between. So the interesting thing here is that this film is coming in the storyline after she's had things that have led her to acquire a horn, and I'm talking about Twilight Sparkle has been through some trials and experiences that have gotten her this far, and then this train approaching the gates. Interesting. Okay, so that was on the train station. Oh, I have more on the train station. Let's see. Let's see. Do we have her? Yeah, she's. They've just come off the train and they're going into the city. And she gathers with her friends at the train station and comments that she's still getting used to her wings. Thus, they are a recent acquisition, and those of you that know the series can say something about what may have been happening to her. Again, I didn't go back and look at all the material before this to know her backstory, but obviously she's been through some experiences and has achieved or been awarded these wings and her horn. So it's interesting to look at the group of friends. Who has wings? Who has horns? We only have 2 horns. Herself, Twilight Sparkle, has a horn, and Rarity has a horn. But Rarity doesn't have wings like Twilight Sparkle does. Rainbow Dash has wings, and even though you see Pinkie Pie here looking like she's flying, she's simply hopping. She's such a happy character. She just hops right up there. So she doesn't have wings or a horn. Rainbow Dash doesn't have a horn but has wings. Rarity has a horn, no wings. And this is Fluttershy, and she has wings, no horn. And this is Applejack, no horn, no wings. I think this represents that they are all at different levels in their ascension process. And yet they're a very close group, knit group of friends. And I think this talks about our community. They were all at different phases in the process. And there's no one better than the other sense of it. Although I would have to say they are focusing on Twilight Sparkle as being better than the others because she's about to get a crown in this episode. Yeah. Okay. So, there was a major sync with the train station. So as I'm working on this, Joseph in our community um, who's just moved to Florida. Just before he moved, had an experience where it was a case of mistaken identity for holding up the train. Um, and that came up while I'm working on this, and I'm thinking, okay, well, again, we have a reference to a train, and Joseph, you were holding up the Ascension train. No, no, don't take it that way. I'm just thinking that was interesting. It came up, and also I don't know if there was something about that he was accused of actually holding it up, held up, and someone in the live chat mentioned the Lord Huron song showing the train robbery. Oh yeah, that was the Lord Huron song, the Ends of the Earth song, which you can see on Nathan's channel. Okay, moving on to the crystal towers. So, crystal towers were 3 tetrahedrons. The path from the transition to the crystal city is flanked by 2 tall crystal towers, which, like a gate, the friends pass through on their travels to the city, and suspended between the 2 pillars are 3 tetrahedron-shaped crystals. And Paul Main, you can, yeah. So I already said that. Okay. But why 3? I'm kind of curious. And again, it reminds me of the 3 stars around the moon. As above, so below. We had the 2 that were supposedly the horn stars of the Giedi, and then I forgot the name of the one that was supposed to be in the head of the goat. But again, we have it reversed here. 2 that look the same color, and then the blue one there. Interesting. So let's move on to entering the Great Hall. What do we see here? Right away, what caught my attention is these banners with how many? 8 points. And what direction is it going? If you imagine these as a point getting caught in the wind as it rotates, this is rotating counterclockwise. You see it? If it was rotating clockwise, the points would go the other way. So we have 8 points rotating counterclockwise. And look back at the Noble Eightfold Path and dukkha and what counterclockwise and all that. Okay, so while we're looking at this, you will see there are 3 characters here, and the 2 of them that sort of hold dominion over this realm are Celestia and Luna, and yep, I'll come back to that. I just want to finish about the trumpeters first here. So there's 6 trumpeters. And when I was looking at this, we were also talking in the group about all the people hearing trumpet sounds. And yes, I know that's like 2 months ago we were talking about that, but that's when I started working on this. And then I saw these trumpets, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting us another sync. So we have the trumpets, we have the banners with the 8 rayed suns, and then we have Celestia and Luna, which the sun and moon motifs. And there is, this is a representation of the Noble Eightfold Path. I just wanted to say which rotates counterclockwise in the 8 points. So look for the link below on the Noble Eightfold Path. And here we have just from the Freemasons, when you talk about Celestia and Luna, they typically show the moon on one side, the sun on the other side. I'm not going to go into all the other symbolism that's there, but just to mention. So then, while talking about Freemasons and symbology, and try and stay neutral on this as best we can, because I think it's ascension markers, if anything. Let me get my little tool here and have a look at what do we see. We see a line going down, a line going down, a line going this way and this way, right? And a circle underneath. So, yeah, Need to erase that, I guess, in order to move on to the next slide. Oh, I didn't experiment with that first. I guess I have to go out of that, go back to pointer. There we go. Then I can move on. Sudden to that symbol. Well known by many, right? Okay. Moving on. And I think this is a good place to stop for this first one, 50 minutes. Oh my goodness, you don't want to listen to me all that time. I'm going to break it off here, and the next thing we'll talk about is when sunset steals the crown. Okay, so we'll take a pause here. See you back in a bit.